Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Divinely Uninspired podcast. And we've got some changes. I don't know if you'll notice later, but Rusty has left us. And he's not dead, just dead to me for leaving. But I am taking over in his spot. And with me, as with Rusty in the past, is Jeremy.
Yeah. How are you guys doing? It's been a long time.
It has been.
It has been almost 3 months.
We've had a lot of people asking what happened to the podcast, and we're back.
Yep. Penny,
Hey, everyone.
what have you been up to?
You know, just finally put my dog down, that kind of thing. I feel
Wait
like
Welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome back.
my devil dog is dead, everyone. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's all good. You need to introduce yourself.
It was actually sad. Well, I'm Paul. I was sometimes the fourth seat in the podcast, so you're stuck with me leading for now until this one goes off the rails. But we're going to hit the theme song, and then we're going to get started to another great episode.
Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're listening to Divinely Uninspired, podcast by Journey Church Shepherdsville, hosted by Jeremy Willis and me,
Paul Roughton.
You can find us online at journeyshepherdsville.com. For questions or comments, email podcast@journeyshepherdsville.com. Maybe we'll feature your question or comment on a future episode. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show.
And the whole episode should be as seamless as that was.
Was great. I like that how even with the change of the theme song, Penny still doesn't get a shout out. Like, it's still just male dominated. I think she's been on every podcast for like the last 25 at least, and we're like, no, it's still just the guys.
You don't fix something that's not broken. So
Yeah.
No.
we'll get a new theme song. We'll get everybody included. And
Thanks, Paul.
this was a last second thing. I was thinking we were recording tomorrow.
I think it's great.
Well, good.
Bill Gothard would not approve.
No, he would have approved.
He would have. He just
Because you were omitted.
The best part is we had this discussion last night about the theme song, and let me tell you, that exceeded my expectations.
That's what I'm here for. So, as Jeremy alluded to, Bill Gothard, if you've been watching Shiny Happy People on the Amazon Prime Network, it's the first thing we're going today. So, if you all don't know, the Duggars, who seem to be the best people on TV, were, surprise, surprise, not that great behind the scenes. So, Jeremy, did you get to catch up and watch
I did. I watched all 4 episodes. I will be honest with you. I did not know very much about the Duggars. I never watched 18 or 19 and count. I never watched any of that. I don't watch reality television. So everything I know about the Duggars is based from this documentary, to be honest with you. Like, I knew who they were people, and I know that the whole Josh Duggar thing, like in the news and stuff, but no, I did not know anything about them. So anybody that has 19 children to me is just weird. So I probably didn't really want to know much about them anyway. So yeah, there's that.
I can't believe you haven't seen one episode.
Not a one. I don't have cable. I haven't had cable in 15 years.
They've been on way before cable.
Oh,
We
Not
never
way
watched
before, like,
they were
we
on
all
way
got
before
rid of
cable. They were on before cable.
way before the rest of us got rid of cable, I guess I should say. This is, so this family, if you're unfamiliar with the Duggars, it's what, like 19 kids?
And
They actually had
counting.
And counting is apparently the thing.
So they are, from what I could take from the very beginning of the episodes, they were involved in a Baptist church, I'm assuming. That's what we all assumed.
It doesn't say, but
They didn't specifically say. So when you saw the show, it was never, religion was never really mentioned, but it was prominent in the way that they did things around their home.
As
and
I told
how
my
they taught.
wife, it had the smell of Baptist all over it.
That's
coming
what
from
I-
a Baptist
exactly.
background. I was
yeah,
like, some
but
of this is
a lot of fundamentalist churches have a Baptist hint to them. Well, it says right there, hockey team and the Duggars, evangelical Baptist beliefs. So,
Hey, so was
if we'd have
Ray.
read the article, we would have known that.
We
but
didn't have the articles.
We watched
we
the
just pulled
show.
this one up. But
Falling
we pulled up
behind,
the show.
Paul.
I literally put the first article from Shiny Happy People up on the screen. So let's not focus. I'll
So
unplug
I
the
do
screen.
I do know people that I didn't know the Duggars, but I do know the thinking behind the Duggars, and it is this verse that comes from the Old Testament about having a quiver full. And a quiver full is basically where you have as many children as you can possibly have to populate the earth. And I think we'll find out if you watch the documentary, which you should. And we probably shouldn't give away a lot of stuff just because people may want to watch it. It's only 4 episodes. When you all told me we were going to do this, me and Jamie watched the first episode, and then we watched the next 3. Like, I mean, we literally binged the whole thing, and it was fascinating to watch. So
Yeah,
sad, but fascinating.
Yeah, we don't watch. We were not Duggar people when it came out. We don't watch reality TV either. But I've not really gotten into a series in a while, like a new show. I tend to watch the same old garbage over and over. But we started watching this, and it was some of it. Even in the middle, it seemed like there wasn't even a theme to the show. It was just this wild information. It was almost like Tiger King, where you were just watching it, and you were like, "What is happening next? What's going on?" Because I didn't know anything about them. I've never heard of Bill Gothard or any of that before either. So
you guys need to go back and watch some. I'm telling you, it's cringeworthy. Like you watch
sure.
it and you're like,
I mean, I don't need to watch it. I think watching this documentary, like it would almost be just, I don't know. Because you'd watch the show now in hindsight, knowing all this was going on behind the scenes, and you'd be like, I can't watch this.
Yeah, so not to give away like the documentary about what is going on within the walls of that home, but we used to watch it and be like, she is so kind to her kids. Like, she is so soft-spoken. How does she not go crazy having 19 kids? And this documentary was just, it was unbelievable. We sat and binged it as well as home. So
the most shot, I think that is not watching the Duggars, but just seeing that stuff. But it's not just them. I mean, the IBPL, I mean, it's big. And,
right.
you know, and again, we make fun of, you know, April sometimes because she like homeschools her kids and all that stuff. But like how deep this went, like just in the homeschool movement and then like all that with the ATI and all that stuff. It was pretty fascinating. And I consider myself pretty knowledgeable in the church world, and I had never heard of this guy. Like I'd heard of the Duggars, but this Bill Gothard guy, how do you say his name? Gothard. I had never heard of him. But I will say a lot of the principles that they talk about and that he teaches, I will be honest, like they were familiar because I feel like there's churches that modeled themselves after some of the stuff that he did. So I think even though if you weren't part of the IBPL, I feel like his reach went way deeper than the IBPL.
So do you want to go over some
IBLP? Sorry.
IBLP. They do a lot of acronyms.
That's the Institute of Basic Life Principles.
Yeah.
So
anyways, you probably need to, like, if for those who haven't watched the documentary, kind of talk a little bit about Bill Gothard and his principles on how he formatted the home in order for it to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, so he was it says in this article we're looking at, it says a Christian minister. Although he did not have a church, I don't think he was, I think Dr. Mary talked about this, he was never ordained anywhere. Like I don't know really where he came from. I'm sure you could do some more digging and find that out. But
he has a BA from Wheaton, it says.
Yeah, so Wheaton's a big college in Chicago, a big Christian university. A lot of famous guys have come from there, and it's a pretty famous school. But I mean, like I said, I don't know much about him other than he just kind of came out of nowhere apparently and started this movement. And I mean, they were doing like conventions and all this stuff, and basically it seems like some of the big principles that I picked up on were wives submitting to husbands was definitely a big part of it, and the wives, the man runs that, and there was like that authority umbrella where you have Jesus, and then you have the man, and then you have the female, and then you have kids. And so anyway, so that was taught, and then disciplining kids. I mean, there were just so many weird moments. The two that really were shocking was the blanketing. I don't know if you guys remember that part. The Duggars, it's in their book. It's where you would take a child about 6 months old to a year old, and you'd set them on a blanket, and then you would put a toy that they wanted outside of the blanket. And as the kid reaches for the toys, you would take a dowel rod and you would beat the child until they stopped reaching for the toy. Like that was in the documentary, and it's actually, they showed it's in her book. So that one was shocking, and they learned that from BLP. And then the other one was, I don't know if you remember that one scene where at one of their conferences, that old man brings up that like 5 or 6 year old boy
and spanks him on
and
the stage.
shows it's not his kid,
right?
And shows them how to spank the child. And it was very cringeworthy to watch. And to be honest with you, like to be at that conference or convention and to watch that and to not be like, there's something wrong with what I just experienced. And I'm not talking about spanking. I'm talking about the way in which he did it was like, and this is not against spanking or whatever. You can do whatever you want as far as I'm concerned. But the whole way it went about was just so weird to watch.
So that's funny that you mentioned that, because that was one of my takeaways from the documentary. Was it was at a conference, and this woman got up on the stage, and she was talking to the people there, and she said, and she was smiling, like just smiling. She was like, I have a 14-month-old and I just could not get him to listen, and I just spanked him all day long.
Oh yeah, she was creepy.
Long.
Big teeth. Yeah,
yes.
big teeth lady.
I mean, it was so scary, and I thought, what is wrong
and
with
she's
these
saying
people?
it like, 14-month-old who was being, what was the word?
Disobedient to his mother or something. I don't remember.
And they had to give him encouragement. That was the word.
Yes.
So spanking was not spanking. It was, I'm giving them encouragement.
I mean,
so,
14 months old.
But I think what really sticked out about this guy was how much influence he had. And again, I'm not saying one way or the other about homeschooling. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. The model that they followed was definitely, I mean, when you look at they showed some of the curriculum in the documentary that they used, and you'd be like, this is, and then even the people that had gone through it are now looking back, and there was a big part where it talked about they're struggling because they were never actually formally educated, and like even in basic principles. So that was the thing that stuck out to me about this guy specifically, though, and it says it in this article, was he basically created a huge, I mean, and it was huge when you look into it, ministry about how to raise your family, but also the order of your household. This guy was never married and never had children. So all of these people were following a guy about how to have a relationship with your spouse who was never married and then also never had kids. And you guys will find this out in the documentary. Shocker. There was all kinds of abuse and sexual allegations against not only him, but throughout the entire IBLP. And so that's kind of the main thing. And then even within the Duggar family, and again, I never watched it. I'm sure there's people that love the Duggars and all that, but there's a lot of abuse and a lot of stuff that, the kids now are coming out and saying that happened. And so it was shocking.
Well, I think most importantly, like after this is all over, I mean, Bill Gothard is no longer part of this movement.
And Jim Duggar took over.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, Jim Bob Duggar.
Jim whatever.
You got
Jim
the
Bob
in
Duggar,
there.
sorry.
But even this is still happening. Like this movement is still happening. You just don't see it the way that it was, I don't know, from the 90s or the early 2000s when Bill Gothard was still in a part of it. So,
I saw a couple of ministers that I follow, pretty prominent people in the country, that tweeted after this came out, which also piqued my interest. And they were kind of saying in their tweets that basically they were shocked at how much of this thinking is in their churches. Like that the influence that this IBLP and Bill Gothard had on their churches, who are not associated with it, but just how much influence the Christian culture has had from like what he was talking about and teaching.
Well, what made me really fascinated with this, I was, after watching it for a while and having daughters, like I was mad. Like it really, a lot of it just made me upset because like we send our child to a private Christian school and she comes here or they both come here and we want them to be in like this safe place. And all these parents were sending their kids to this thing thinking kind of the same thing. And now it makes you look at like, what are we doing with our kids? Are we doing the right thing by even trying to send them to places like this? Like how deep do you have to look into an organization before you can trust them with your children?
And I think that was the part too, where they were showing like the summer camps they send their kids to, and they were really just like work camps. Like that. I mean, that stuff is definitely, I think the problem, what this exposes, to answer your question or talk about it, is a lot of people assume that because it's Christian that it's good. And I think that we have well documented, not only in this podcast, but just if you've even been paying attention, because not only did this come out, but this is coming on the heels of the Hillsong thing that just came out. If you haven't watched that, that's fascinating too, about the downfall of Hillsong. And Hillsong was, if not the most, I would say, prominent and influential church probably in the world for a period of time. Mainly because of their music, but also they were one of the early kind of mega churches that did this like campus and spreading. So, I mean, you've got this coming out literally right on the heels of the Hillsong documentary, which I think is also on Hulu. I think it's on Amazon Prime, right? Is that right? So, very, very concerning. But there is a lot of like, okay, can we trust these things that we're being taught? And I guess, again, it goes back to the false assumption that just because it's Christian, it's good, and that's not necessarily true.
I had to have this talk this morning with my oldest. She's going to be 12 this year, and she's, I'd say, more mature in a lot of ways to be able to talk to her about things, but that what some of these people did where they did like deconstruction, where they had to like actually look at what they actually believe, and it was that kind of thing where you're going to grow up and you're going to have to look at things that you were told, and you're going to have to weigh them against, what your beliefs, you're going to come up with your own beliefs. Like she's a believer now as it is, but like, some of these people, they grew up in these places and, they got older and they realized what was going on and they've, pushed God out of their lives because that's what they associate with Christianity. And it's...
Yeah, and I think the theme that both of these shows had that I picked up on was it was money-based. So, I mean, obviously, the Duggars, like, that was a big component of the show was the money, how much they were getting paid to do the show. And there's a big part of it, too, I think, towards the end of it, where they talk about that the kids never received any money. And so it was all going to the parents. And then also, the Hillsong documentary, again, I mean, that was solely about money and power. And so I think that's, that is one of those things that you have to watch out for is this abuse of people and beliefs, but the tie-in to money and power and position that they have in common.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I don't want to get you in trouble, but the whole submitting to, like, the wife submitting to the husband, well, in this particular circumstance, it's very much out there. Like, whatever he says goes.
Yeah.
But if we take a more modern Christian, if you follow Candace Cameron Burr, the lady from Full House, she made a comment. She's like, I submit to my husband. Whatever, he agrees is best for the family, I go with. So is that in the Bible, like, to an extent of submitting? Yeah,
I mean, so it's a very patriarch context the Bible comes out of. I mean, so about the whole women thing, we're not going to get into this, but the whole SBC thing going on with Rick Warren. Rick Warren made a tweet the other night that people are talking about, and he's actually supposed to retweet all of his resources. And I've studied this on my own. And again, I'm not going to make public comments or tell people what they should do, but there is a misunderstanding of the texts a lot of times when it comes to women in the church. And there's been a lot of scholars for a long time saying that we've mishandled some of these words because, again, it goes back to the idea that the Bible is not written in English. It's not written in the language that we speak. It's written in the Greek language, and then it gets translated into, at some point, Latin, and then Latin into German, and then German into English eventually. So all that to say, there's a lot of lost in what's that movie, Lost in Translation with Bill Murray? A lot of lost in translation stuff, but people are asking some tough questions. But the submitting thing, I've always told people this. I said, I'm not going to make definitive statements. I'm not going to say it. But in that context that Paul talks about women submitting to their husbands.
Not me, the Paul from the Bible.
Paul from the Bible, yeah. He does say, but also in that same thing, that idea of that husbands are to love their wives as Christ loved the church. So when you think about how Christ loved the church, Christ put people above himself. And so... yeah, you maybe should, if you're just reading the text just on surface levels, wives submit to their husbands, so to speak. But the men are also submitting to the women in some way because you're loving them the way that Christ loved the church. And so you're putting their needs above your own. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so it's a two-edged sword in that, there's that one line, but it's followed up by a line that basically is comparing husbands to Jesus, who put everything on the line and put the needs of others above himself. And so in some ways, he's also submitting to his wife and submitting to the family by putting their needs first. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you take one verse and you can go all crazy about it until you pair it with the verse that's right afterwards. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, it says that, but it also says husbands are supposed to love their wives the way that Christ loves the church. And so Christ, in some ways, put aside his own will and his own want to put the church first. And so anyway.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Are you trying to put actual good context on a Bible verse and not just bend your needs around it?
No, I'm just saying that's what it says.
I know.
So, yeah.
It's what most people should do, but very few do because they don't actually read the Bible. They get a verse or something on their Instagram that's one line and then live their whole life by it, but they don't really understand what's going on. So,
yep.
Do we have any closing thoughts on this hot
You should
disaster?
watch it, and I would be interested to see what people think about it. And I think you should watch the Hillsong documentary too.
Yeah.
They're both fascinating. And I think that when you watch this, this whole thing is weird to me. Like, even before I watch this, like I lay my cards on the table. Like 19 kids, no thanks. The whole and part of their belief system is that they can't be on birth control because birth control is like telling God no. And I'm like, well, that's dumb because we tell God no about a lot of things. I don't know if birth control needs to be the issue. So I have issues with their thinking even before all of that. But I think what I would question people is when you watch stuff like this, allow your own belief system to be challenged. Like, you may watch this and be like, oh, this is really weird. But some of the principles that I'm telling you that came from this guy's teaching and specifically this organization are principles that we believe are true, that maybe, like you, Stephen, what we talked about with submitting to your husband, maybe aren't exactly what the Bible actually says. And so I think it's just, when you watch this, watch it with an open mind. And the other side of that, to your point, Paul, is don't assume that everybody's like this. And the Hillsong thing, don't assume that everybody's like Brian Houston and Carl Lentz, because they're not. There are people that that are wanting to do good. And I think a lot of these people, I can't say much about this Gothard guy, but I would say that Jim Bob Duggar and his wife, when they first started out, I'm assuming they had good intentions. But then I think money and power polluted those good intentions.
And so paving the road to hell with them, as most people do.
Yeah. So I think that they probably started off as good people trying to raise a family and be probably a positive influence. But I think the power and influence got to them, and then it just went off the rails.
I mean, there's a chance that's how Gothard started out. And then when you start realizing, I can tell these people whatever I want and I get away with everything. It's the same reason they made a short talk about Scientology with Tom Cruise, but it's one of the main reasons they say that like Travolta and all those people stay in Scientology, because they've been told you can do whatever you want and we will back you up, and you can, like, allegedly they could kill somebody and the church would say, that's fine, we'll do whatever we can to keep. And why would you leave that if you I would just say too, like, anybody that's never been married or had kids that's trying to tell you how to have a healthy marriage and raise your kids, you should just be like, you don't get a say in this, because you don't. I mean, they're both difficult, and we all acknowledge that. So children and wives are very difficult.
Children and wives, but so are husbands.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. I mean, not as difficult as a wife, but
We're done with this article. Okay. Move on.
Which button mutes Penny? All right. So moving on from that, Jeremy has joined us again this week. He is back he had a trip to Guatemala, but he also had some fun in the interim between podcasts where me and Penny were getting closer to Jesus by harassing workers at Target. Jeremy went to Railbird, and here's Jeremy's review.
So you all went to Target together?
We were knocking over pride displays and yelling at the people at the front and then shaking Bibles at them. That's
all right. Well,
oh gosh,
good to know. Yeah,
we had our Journey shirts on.
It's fine. I went to Railbird, and it was awesome. And I love music festivals. I used to go to a lot of them, and then we had children, and that took that away from us. But now we're older, and so our kids are older, and so we can leave them for the weekend. So I was really impressed with it. One of my favorite artists in probably the last 20 years, becoming slowly my favorite artist of all time, is Tyler Childers from Kentucky. I'm not a country music guy, but for some reason I really like him a lot. He's more like, he's different. He's got that folk bluegrass / kind of country, alt country or whatever. But he's one of my favorites of all times, Tyler Childers. He was great. Zach Bryan, I do like Zach Bryan a lot too. He was also really good. The Head and the Heart was probably my favorite show. If you don't know The Head and the Heart, they're really good. They're not as good without their female singer, so shout out to the women. But it was a submission issue from what I heard, is why she quit. And so anyway, The Head and the Heart was great. Weezer,
Head and Heart were not in the right
Head and
place.
Heart, yeah. So, but they were great. Weezer was surprisingly probably one of my favorite shows. So I grew up listening to Weezer. I honestly didn't even know Weezer was still together. But they killed it, and they played all their biggest hits, and so it was really good. And so it was a lot of fun. These are all bands I would highly recommend. 49 Winchester was really good. Town Mountain was really good. Again, these are like, they're not country, they're like that bluegrass, like alternative country kind of sound. I can't do like straight up country music, and I know Zach Bryan, some people say he's country. He is, but he's different than some of these other artists.
Well, I had a question about that. So I recognize about 5 of the names on here.
Yeah.
But Weezer didn't really seem to fit the bill.
They didn't, but a lot of these bands, so like Sheryl Crow was there. I
could see her.
Yeah.
I could see her playing that sort of music.
So this festival, they try to, like, the heavy was almost like kind of like, not tech, they weren't techno because I know that's not a thing, but like dance music kind of, not all their stuff, but some of their stuff. So, they were the Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats is a little different. They're more like rock and that type of stuff. Amos Lee is, if you've never heard of Amos Lee, he's really good. He sang a song called Louisville, which was really good. I think this festival, they try to reach out to everybody, but I think at the end of the day, they realize we're in Kentucky, so our headliners are probably going to be country music artists. But like the Head and the Heart is not country at all. Like they're from California. Like they're kind of they're like a folky sound, but like if you imagine a folky sound from California.
Did you see Jenny Lewis?
We heard Jenny Lewis. So the way Railbird is set up is there's 3 stages, and they're on different parts of the field, and so you have to kind of get selective of who you're going to go listen to. And so we heard Jenny Lewis, but we were not there for her whole show because they stack them to where like you can't really ever see a full set if you want to see the next set because there's about a 15-minute hangover, but time where like if Whiskey Myers is ending at 7:45, Nathaniel Ratliff is starting at 7:30. So like you kind of have to pick and choose some of the artists. So which ones you want to hear?
So Jenny Lewis, they say you get to like a certain age and you just stop listening to new music. So on the edge of that, I really enjoyed, what she was bringing to the table.
Yeah.
But she was also the star of one of my all-time favorite movies, The Wizard.
Okay.
With Fred Savage, where him and his brother play Nintendo across the
Shut
country. She's the
up.
redheaded girl from that.
I loved that movie.
Yeah.
So she's had quite the career.
Yeah.
But she's very good.
Marcus Mumford was there, and I think everybody thought that wasn't paying attention that Mumford, it was Marcus and the Sons, and it wasn't the Sons. It was just him on a stage with a guitar, and he could only play certain songs that he wrote for Mumford and Sons, which is a huge band. But we all agreed he was great, but he needed the Sons because without him, he's just not the same.
He's just Marcus.
He's just Marcus. He needed the Sons.
He's not allowed to play those songs legally? Is that a...
No, he can only play the songs when he's doing his solo stuff that he wrote because they still own... He can't play songs he didn't write. So I don't know what's going on with Mumford and Sons, but it was just Marcus Mumford.
It sounds very contentious. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time. We missed you while you were gone.
Yeah,
but,
it was good.
It's good to get away and to...
Yeah, and Bourbon and Beyond is coming up, and I'm not excited about all the acts, but Saturday I think we're going to go because it's the Black Keys, the Black Crows, and the Avett Brothers are all that night.
The Avett Brothers are great.
With 3 of my favorite bands.
Yeah, so this lineup seems like... Has this been going on for a while, this Railbird?
Yeah, so like they usually... Yeah, this is I think the 3rd year they did it. So they didn't do it last year because 2 years ago was a disaster. They ran out of water. They ran out of alcoholic beverages for the adults. The food lines were about an hour and a half long, people said. And so they didn't do it last year because apparently the toilets, like they didn't have enough. It was apparently just a disaster. So this year they almost had too much stuff. So I never waited in line, and I just had a regular ticket. I didn't have like VIP or platinum or whatever the other higher edge tickets were. I never waited in line for more than like 5 minutes. And so that was great. Even for food, like we just walk up, order our food, and be ready 5 minutes later. So I highly recommend the Railbird Festival if you're looking for a music festival.
Yeah, get it while it's good. This seems to be one of those lineups where in like 3 or 4 years, Nelly's in there for some reason. And
I don't think they'll do it. Bourbon and Beyond is doing that. I don't know if you saw. There's some interesting nights.
That's what I mean. Then they're like Outcast is reunited.
But Railbird, I think, kind of seems to know what it is. It's kind of that, okay, our headliners are probably going to be country music acts, but we're going to throw in some Weezer and some Marcus Mumford and Head and the Heart for everybody that's not totally interested in the country. So it was good.
The best segue there's ever been. All right, so we're going to go back to the heavy-hitting news. In memoriam of our friend Rusty, who's no longer with us, I went to IFL Science, and something that's really been dominating at least part of the internet in the last few weeks is all of this talk about UFOs, and suddenly they're real. And
well, some people wouldn't say suddenly. Some people have been saying for a hot minute.
Are we sure that this has been dominating the news, or is it just like showing up in your Instagram feed?
It has
because you've been looking it up.
It has been all over various things like Reddit and with UFOs. Apparently, this guy saw one, and the police came and did interviews, and the UFO community which is a thing. Apparently, they're one group is discrediting that guy, but then NASA is talking about it, and
I want to see what the best smartwatch is of 2023.
Oh man.
If you go on IFL Science, you be prepared that your computer,
so much happening
your
right
homepage of IFL Science is real good today. If you're on there
you may need to buy a new computer.
Yeah, you might not do it in front of your kids.
Yeah.
So, what do you all? We'll start with Penny. Jeremy just got to do a lot of heavy lifting in the last segment. What do you think about UFOs or UAPs, as they call them now, the unidentified anomalous phenomena?
I don't really think about them enough to even have a say-so.
Okay.
If they're there, they're there. I don't know. What do you want me to say? The idea of a UFO actually being in Earth, being the exact size that we are as humans, being able to fly something in our
Well, you are getting all over the place.
Well,
you don't have
don't,
opinions, but they're all our size now.
well,
We're talking about the ships.
No. I know. I'm talking about the ships. Let's just say Earth in general. Like the size of the universe is massive.
Allegedly.
We are literally the size of a piece of dust on, let's just say, a shelf compared to everything else that is in our universe. Multiple galaxies. Like it just doesn't make sense that aliens would find us. Like I think we are so small that if there were something out there, we would not be able to be found.
That sounds like an opinion.
And
That's
I'm
pretty
sorry,
firm.
that's just what I think.
But you didn't have an opinion, but now you do.
I mean, I don't have any opinion about them actually visiting us. I just don't think I don't know. I think we're too small of a planet for us to be found in a giant universe.
What do you think they're covering up?
But as a woman,
Oh gosh.
and as
For the record, that was Jeremy.
But
not
as a
Paul.
woman and someone that has Korean relatives, do you think that you need to wash rice before cooking?
What? I do wash my rice like about 5 times.
That is the next article.
Okay.
So it goes from UFOs to do you need to wash
I would like
rice?
to apologize to everyone. I have put up a screen for the podcast now so we can see the articles as a group. And it is, if you've ever watched our service online, we're not great at avoiding shiny things in the corner.
Yeah,
So
that one just stuck out. Anyway.
what you're supposed to do with the rice actually is cook it for 10 minutes and then rinse the water out and put new water in. It gets the arsenic out of your rice.
So, do you know
you're welcome.
The key
No,
to
that's
cooking
for
with
brown
rice
rice only.
is I've learned is to make it the day before. You make rice the day before, and then you let it set, and then whatever you're cooking with it the next day, it absorbs the flavor better because
Okay, so no, I have a rice cooker because
Well,
that was
of
a
course.
Christmas
That's not a
gift
very
from
nice
my
thing to say about your
mother-in-law.
mother.
She gave me a rice cooker. And you do wash your rice to get off the extra starch so it's not as like
Well, I rinse it regardless. So if it's arsenic or starch, we're living
you should
good rice life.
You should be.
All right, so UFOs.
What do you think,
Yeah.
Jeremy?
Jeremy,
about-
go ahead.
I don't know. I've never seen one, but I agree with Penny. I think the universe is so big that I think it's silly of us at times to maybe think we're the only intelligent life that God created. And so I think, again, like if you do, there's all these things, like she said, like a dust on a shelf, like you can see how small the Earth is actually in our own galaxy. And we're just one of hundreds or thousands of galaxies. So, I mean, the fact that we believe that we're the only intelligent life out there, again, like I said, and from the faith side of it, the Bible doesn't really address that. It's not its agenda. It's only talking about life here on Earth and us as humans. So I don't have a problem with the idea that there could be UFOs out there.
Well, that was what was going to lead me to this. What does Jeremy think? But we've got a second segment for that. But that is what I was listening to a non-Christian podcast, and they were saying they were acting like, well, what will faith-based people do if aliens exist? Because how does that fit into our plan? But I think the same way you do, that if it doesn't say it in the Bible, it's all speculation.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have to acknowledge the Bible for not only what it does say, but what it doesn't say. And so I think that, it doesn't concern itself with what exists outside of this heavens and this earth, which they would have thought of as literally the earth and the sky above. So I read a book one time, I can't remember who wrote it. I think it was Science Mike, and not Science Mike that comes on Sunday, but a different Science Mike. And he was saying in there that he was talking to what is it? Astronomer? Not astrology.
Astronomer is the real one.
Yeah, astronomer is the real one. And he was talking to an
offense.
astronomer, and astronomer was asking him, like, hey, as we study the stars and universes and all that, like, what will you do as a person of faith when we do eventually find intelligent life out there? And Science Mike basically said, like, to me, that makes the story more interesting, not less. That, like, it doesn't ruin my faith. It actually makes it more interesting that there actually is life. I will say about the one thing I've always believed about aliens, if they exist, and UFOs, is it scares me that we would encounter some type of life form that has the ability to get to us, but we can't get to them. I mean, like, we can't even really there's not even been a person that's ever been on Mars, like, and that's like our closest planet. And we're pretty certain that there's no other life on this solar system because of the way that other planets are. And we've sent probes and stuff and studied them. But like, it's kind of scary to think that if there is a UFO, that there's a being out there intelligent enough to get to us, but we have no chance probably in any of our lifetimes to actually get to actually send a person outside of our actual solar system. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about, and it's one of those things that growing up you always think, well, those people are crazy when they talk about them, but Now NASA's talking about it, so do with that what you will. We have Space Force looking out for us now, so we should be pretty solid in the future going through that. So other news, and we have not put this up on the screen, so we're just going to go into it from that. With all the wildfires, hopefully everybody is safe. We in Louisville or Shepherdsville, where we are now, we didn't really you all have not really seen a lot of haze from them.
We did a little bit, right?
you?
Like I feel like that
there was a couple days where it was kind of cloudy.
Yeah.
That they said it was just because of the wildfires.
Kind of cloudy seems like an understatement with some of the people like in New York City where the sky was red, and in California where you couldn't see the bridges because of all the smoke coming through. But we have a What Does Jeremy Think that comes live from our friend here, Penny. So let's
What does Jeremy think?
Penny, you want to ask him
wow,
live?
that was so loud. First of all,
This is my first time using the board. I apologize.
yeah, he's enjoying this way too much. So the idea that natural disasters are happening, like it doesn't necessarily have to be the fires, but we're talking like earthquakes that have leveled cities, volcanoes erupting, stuff like that. I mean, is that? I know it's probably far fetched, but we talk about a new Earth eventually. So is this a sign like the Earth is falling apart, or is this just nature?
I don't know. I don't think it is. I think that tragedies. So here's what I would say is, and you can say this in ancient history as well as recent history. Like tragedies like these have been going on for as long as we can record history. The problem is we just weren't always aware of them because it took a while for news to travel. You know, something happens now. I mean, you know, like I was watching a documentary the other day about, and this wasn't a natural disaster, but it was still like a couple years ago when was it Japan, where that tsunami came and
Right.
then that nuclear reactor, and they thought it was going to be like Hiroshima and Chernobyl all over again. So, I mean, like we've already forgot about that. Like I'd forgot that even happened other than the fact that I watched that documentary. So I think that this stuff's been happening not only in recent history, but for a while. When we were in Guatemala, actually, we drove past a volcano that they still have 3 pretty active volcanoes down in Guatemala that could actually erupt at any point in time, and people know that. And there was one that erupted just like I think 6 or 7 years ago, and it killed thousands of people because they didn't have time to leave their homes after it erupted. And like that happened. I don't even remember seeing a news report about that. Like it wiped out an entire village down in Guatemala. And I mean, this was not even that long ago. So, okay, all that to say, like this stuff's been happening for a long time. From a biblical context, I would say that whatever the stories are trying to tell us in the Bible, and whatever Genesis is trying to tell us is that we live in a fallen world. The story in Genesis will tell us that we live in a fallen world, fallen creation because of sin. But then Paul in Romans kind of goes back to that, and he says that all of creation is groaning. You know, and so since Paul and the kind of the Roman thing that he writes in Romans, like there's been these type of disasters. 2 things: there weren't as many people alive back then, so it wouldn't kill as many people. But we know of like cities and like, you know, what's the famous one that everybody goes and visits? Pompeii. You know, I mean that was a long time ago, so it's not like any of this stuff is new. It's just it's more well reported because of 24/7 news, because of Twitter, because of all that. And it's also a fact that when a lot of these disasters happen, there's just a lot more people on the planet, and so more people get affected by them. So that would be my response. Would just be like, I don't know if it's pointing in the times as much as it's just we're more aware of these things now because of the news than we ever have been.
So are Christians pulling this from Revelation? Is that what's happening? Like the people that are like, oh, COVID, oh, the fires, oh, everything else. I mean, they're blowing this out of context, right? I mean, this is...
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, well, I mean, even like COVID was unique in that it was a worldwide plague, but it wasn't even the most disastrous. I mean, you got the Black Plague that wiped out almost entire countries, you know, whereas, you know, with COVID, obviously it was very serious and a lot of people did die from it. But again, it's not new. It's just it's in our lifetime. And so I think that, you know, C.S. Lewis talks about that idea, and I can't remember which book he wrote that he talked about it, but like the first thing is every generation that's ever existed has thought that the world was ending in their lifetime. I mean, even Paul writes in some of his letters about like when Jesus comes back, he assumed it might be in his lifetime. I would say every generation does it, and I would say the evidence you would use towards that would be natural disasters. It feels like the world's ending, that type of thing, you know. And so I think that that's not new. And I think that every generation also will have some type of natural disaster or, I mean, and again, I wasn't alive during that time frame, but I mean, like, you remember, like, we were talking Sunday in church, like polio. Like, polio was like this big deal, and then all of a sudden it was just gone.
Right.
So people thought like the world, I mean, there's been other things that have popped up where people thought like the world was going to end, that this was the disease or this was the thing that was wiping out the world, and we're still going strong.
You heard it here first. Stop sharing those stories on Facebook if you're over the age of 65.
Well, and I think that's always
Just
been,
get off Facebook and enjoy your grandkids.
That's always been my biggest thing is people are sharing these stories. I mean, from, Paul just pulled this up on the computer. There's 75 different news sources that are talking about this thing. I mean, has anybody here ever even heard of the Evening Standard? And so I've heard of the Guardian, which the Guardian is actually known to not be accurate. Like, there's fake news websites and left-leaning and right-leaning. You should know that if you don't. So there's these non-credible news sources.
This is international.
Yeah.
Evening Standard.
And so, what does that mean?
It's from England.
Do you know who owns it?
I'm sure it's
the English.
The English.
So,
Somebody English.
I mean, these newspapers have been shown that they get bought out by political groups and faith groups and all that stuff. It's not like it's all capitalism, but anyway, all that to say, like, you should stop posting news articles if you don't know the actual source of it. And
would you say it's safe to say, like, the Duggars thing, if you hear these people telling these stories about it's the end of the world, look at what their goal is.
Oh,
if they're asking for money or they're asking for things, say, well, maybe, it might be the end of the world, but what is this person's end goal when they're trying to share this so-called faith-based approach to you? So
yeah, I mean, I think, like, when I think of the end of the world, I think the two things that scare me, I mean, obviously Jesus coming back, but he says like a thief in the night. So if you knew when a thief was coming in the night, it wouldn't be a thief. So his whole point was you just never know when it's going to come. The two things that scare me is us. Like, we can just blow each other. Like, we have the weapons. I mean, there's that new movie coming out I'm excited to see.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah, it looks really
like,
good.
we have the potential to literally ourselves destroy our world. Like, if us and another country that has nuclear weapons decided to go after it, we could literally destroy the entire world. So that is a bigger concern than wildfires and viruses, is just humans and our, and it goes back to full circle. It's all about money and power, right? It goes back to what was the corruption within, that IBPL and the Duggars. I mean, it's money and power. And so I think we scare ourselves the worst. The other thing that scares me is the sun. And because it's just like, we know so little about the sun, and it's so big, and it's like, they keep telling us it's going to live for billions of years. And I'm like, but what happens if the sun just decides tomorrow, like, it's just done?
Well, we wouldn't know for 8 minutes because doesn't it take like 8 to 10 minutes for the light to actually reach Earth?
But like, think about this. You want to talk about scary stuff. Not only the sun, like the heat source of it, but the sun is also what's keeping us in orbit.
Right. Yeah.
So if the sun goes out, like,
well,
I mean, so not to scare everybody, but that's what I'm more concerned about is what's going to happen with the sun thing here.
Well, guys, this is really taking a turn.
Well, and they've studied this. Like, when stars blow up, they get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
They can get 40 times bigger. And so they were saying that, like, it could get so big that it could actually almost get to the Earth. And so, like, it would be what are those called when they blow up? It's supernovas.
Turns into like a white dwarf, right? Like, they turn into different things. The sun will turn into something else.
And so, in closing, because we never know what the sun is going to do, we should always turn to the sun.
Oh, that's
man,
definitely Jim Bob down there.
Let the sun, SON, shine on all of us.
Yeah.
So
they say 5 billion years, but I think they're just making up a number because they know I don't know how to disprove that.
Let me. We're off the rails now, so we might as well just start going left and right. What are your thoughts on dinosaurs, Jeremy?
They may have existed.
Yeah,
they did exist.
How long ago do you think they existed?
I don't know. We don't know.
See, this is what when your child goes to a Christian school.
Here's what I say about
science.
dinosaurs. We've talked about dinosaurs before. So if you, and this is I have pictures I can show you guys. If you go to the Smithsonian and you look at the dinosaurs that they've created, they'll have yellow like bones or sometimes in those like displays. I can't remember if they're actually in the display or they're like on the chart, and it will be like the actual bones they found. So like the famous one to me was the Triceratops. There was 3 bones in that entire giant dinosaur that they built that they actually found. The rest of it was them just like guessing what a Triceratops looks like. So I'm not saying dinosaurs didn't exist, but like the extent to which like all of these like dinosaurs that they've made in like Jurassic Park, like these hundreds and thousands of different species and all that stuff, like most of those we haven't even found even bones for. Like they're just saying this thing existed, which is to me a little bit crazy. And when they existed is also the other side of the coin is that, and I don't want to get into evolutionary theories, but if there was a meteor that came in and destroyed the Earth, like, what did we evolve from? Because if it was big enough to destroy and kill all the dinosaurs, what would be left on Earth as far as life that would eventually become us?
That's a lot.
See, nobody can ever answer that question.
Well, why would we be able to? I don't know.
What I'm saying is, again, you need to start researching yourself, and you need to be scared of the sun.
Not the sun.
Not the sun. The
Just the
S-U-N.
Wise words. All right. Well, if the world does not end in the next week, just remember we have Thursday night services for the summer, except for July 6th when we are taking off for the birthday of our country. And is there anything else that really need to hit on the way out?
No, just keep listening. We'll keep putting out information.
Yes. Stay tuned.
If this is information, people are like, it's like at Bill. Was it Billy Madison? We're not dumber for now listening to this podcast. But yeah, we'll be back in a few weeks and have some new content.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, there's the podcast email.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Penny, for joining us and taking away from your cooking and cleaning, apparently, and
making that rice.
Yep. We'll be back with another episode sometime soon.